Hello everyone, welcome to Mental Health in the Digital Age. I appreciate you stopping your scroll. I'm Titania Jorden and I'm here with Kimberly Young. Kimberly, tell everybody what you do.
I am the Residential Clinical Operations Director for Hillside's residential program. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner by trade, and I oversee all of our programming here at Hillside to ensure that when a child is in our residential program, every aspect of care that they are receiving, every aspect of a staff member supervising them is quality. That everything they receive is helping them get to their life that they deserve to live.
Oh, that's awesome. And we were talking off camera, but you've been at this now for over 15 years, right?
Correct.
Wow, that's incredible. So you've seen some things.
I have.
And one of the most impactful things that I can't wait to get your take on is how things have shifted with the onset of social media and tech. So I've got some questions that I want to make sure I nail down because they're important. So forgive my reading, but what are the most significant factors contributing to the current state of children's mental health? So that's one question. And then, how has technology, especially social media, played a role? So feel free to answer all of that, some of that. I know we could spend an entire hour just on that.
We could probably spend more than an hour,
Yeah.
and it is a very complex issue. The pandemic was significantly impactful for our entire world. For the trauma experienced was beyond something that anybody could really imagine. And sadly, our youth, I think, have seen some of the greatest hit from the pandemic. Now, I'm not going to say the pandemic is the only thing contributing to the mental health crisis of our children and adolescents at this point. The rates of depression and anxiety were already increasing before the pandemic. Yet then we have the pandemic that came, and it made a tough situation exponentially worse. But you ask about the role of social media, and I think where we see the rising rates of depression and anxiety for children and adolescents currently really follows in a lot of ways the trend of the increased use of social media. And this generation seeing they've got tablets in their hand from the beginning, right? But social media is definitely, there are so many positives about it, but there are many negatives. And I attribute it a significant, one of the most significant effects of the mental health crisis for children and adolescents to social media that was worsened by the pandemic. And then social media use increased during the pandemic, right? We lost connection, and that was how people maintained connection.
I lived this, as I'm sure many of you watching did. My son was in 5th grade, March 13th, 2020. Left his 5th grade class to come home for the weekend and never went back. So I am right there with you. I'm not only the chief parenting officer of a tech company that helps to protect close to 7 million children across the nation, but I'm a mom living this and hanging on your every word. I'm longing for the why. I want to know the why, and then I want to know what I can do about it. And I think it's so important for people to know that Hillside exists because that would have been really beneficial to know a few years ago. Childhood is so much different now. I can't imagine a more stark contrast of childhood generation over generation in the history of humanity. But can you talk to, from your professional viewpoint, the relationship between screen time and sleep patterns and just movement in children, and then how that impacts their overall mental well-being?
Sure. The screen time parameters that have been set up are over the age of 6. They're pretty vague, They're balance it with healthy life patterns. And we know that this is important, yet the families are also on the screen at the same time, right? And we can't live in this world without being on some type of digital media. That is where our world is going. And there are phenomenal things that are coming from the digital age. However, we have to go back to those generations, like you're saying, where we find that balance. So where, between the ages of 6 and up, when that brain is developing even more and more and more, and then when their children are developing their sense of self and their self-identity, yet they're not separating from the computers and the screens. The brain does not develop, and then the brain, or it develops, but it develops in a different way where it depends on the social media. It depends on the internet. It depends on that digital screen. And then we're seeing the poor health outcomes that are coming. So, you asked a question about sleep and the lights that are coming. And not only the triggering of the pleasure center in the brain, a child is not able to sleep if they're holding their phone right until they go to bed. Yet we as parents, we're doing that as well a lot of times. We're checking our phone the last 5 minutes before let me check that email before I go to bed. But our brains are developed. And that is the difference, that our brains have developed. We have established other reward centers and other ways of seeking pleasure that our young children have not done yet. And it's their brains. Their brains are just so young and have the potential to do so much, yet we've got to separate from those screens.
I wholeheartedly agree. We talked about the pandemic, and in the aftermath of COVID-19 and isolation, what specific mental health challenges are children facing? Let's answer that first, and then I want to follow up with, just how can parents help support their children through these challenges? So what specific mental health challenges are children facing now, post-pandemic?
The most significant are the rises in depression and anxiety, and the continued rises of suicide attempts, completed suicide, and self-harm. Those are the most significant that we have seen. And as we said before, they were already rising, yet now they have just gone to a different level. We saw a slight little dip in the suicide rates as the pandemic was kind of coming out, but now we're seeing them rise yet again. Second and third leading cause of death within, between about the age of 10 and 24. This is significant. This is life that we're looking at.
So before we get to how parents can help support their children through these challenges, do you have any insight as to why? Why does being isolated at home, if we're out of the pandemic, then there's hope, you would think. Why is this rising? And it's okay if you don't have the answer.
I don't have the answer. I have a lot of theories, and I think that also goes to, I don't think our world, I don't think the state of the science has the answer even yet. There is we're seeing research, right, and things that are correlating. Do we have the answer yet? No. Unfortunately, the children and adolescents of 2024 have been part of a human experiment over the last decade or so. But I think most significantly, what we can point to that goes back to just being human beings from day one is that the pandemic broke human connection. It limited it, and then we tried to fill it in by Zoom calls and the kids going on social media and screens, yes. And there are positives of that again, and I think it maintained them some. Can we imagine what would have happened if they hadn't have had some type of connection? Yet now we come back and we don't even know how to relate with one another. And I think that's how it's impacted the children so much more as they're developing and learning social skills and learning to relate with one another. Now they're back in school, and they lost 2 or 3 years of critical time to learn how to have a healthy relationship with a friend, how to play games healthy, how to have a first romantic relationship as a teenager. They lost that critical time, and now that connection to, we as adults, we're rebuilding it quickly. We had that established, that groundwork established. They didn't have that established, and so now they're making up time, and the depression and anxiety continues to rise.
I'm glad that you expanded on that, because I can't think of a better better way to bring it home than how can parents help support their children through these challenges? This is an incredible challenge. Mm-hmm. You know, is there hope? Can we help these children that have lost that critical, you know, stage of developmental connection?
I couldn't do what I do if I don't believe in and have hope for the future.
Okay.
There is hope, and we have to change a lot of our practices. And we also have to first and foremost acknowledge what has happened. If we are not mindful and acknowledging it with our children, this is what has happened. Let's honor the emotion first and foremost, then we can look towards the future. Mm. And with children and adolescents, as parents, parents also have got to kind of check the facts in a way. They need to truly understand what it is that's troubling their child. It's different for every child. It's individualized 100%. And while some bullying may be affecting one child, body image may be affecting someone else. Mm-hmm. And so having open, honest, transparent communication and being good role models is probably the one most important thing, I think, for parents. To demonstrate and role model to their children, they don't need to have that screen all the time. Let's go for a walk together as a family. Let's have screen-free time at the restaurant when we eat our meals at home. Let's put our phones down. Let's put our computers up an hour before we go to bed, and connect. Figure out how to connect as a family, and then take that outside of the family and have real life relationships. Hmm.
This all sounds nice. Mm-hmm. Like, this is lovely, but not all children embrace what parents are putting out there, right? It's like, I can't tell you how many times I've asked my son to go on a walk with me, and he's like, I'm good, mm-hmm. bro, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. right? And he's wonderful, and I love him dearly, but it's not always easy, even when parents are trying mm-hmm. to connect with their children mm-hmm. and they are modeling. So would you say to those listening, just don't give up and just keep trying? Or perhaps it's, you know, a consideration to think maybe you do need to go outside of yourself. Sometimes kids just don't want to talk to their parents, mm-hmm. no matter how cool or nice mm-hmm. they are.
Well, I think it depends on the problem we're looking to address, right? Like, if we're looking to address connection, putting the screens down, absolutely. Once it's not working in the family, let's reach out. Reach out to your children's friends' parents. Reach out to your schools, your community centers, your churches. Help create a pact together to change the culture together, so that your son probably doesn't want to go for the walk with you because his friends are on something, doing something possibly, and he doesn't want to miss out, right? And so if there is, as a culture, we're able to shift that, then they realize their friends aren't doing it either. I'm going to go with mom for that walk. And it's changing that within the neighborhoods, reaching out in those ways, and having the school support. But if it's your child's having mental health struggles, check the facts and absolutely reach out for help. A lot of times children are not going to talk with the parents about that, especially depending on the age. As they get older, teenage years, become more guarded, more into their own identity. Find out what's going on enough, and then seek some help outside of the home as well.
Kimberly, would you say that there are identifiable patterns in technology use that may indicate a child is experiencing a mental health crisis? And what should parents be observant of?
I think there are key things to be watching for. Whether there are identifiable patterns, I'm not so sure. And the most important thing in the end is to know your child and to see a change from your child's baseline, because everything is going to be individualized. So if you know your child and your child's baseline, then you start to watch for the changes and the possible deterioration of symptoms and moods that's going on. But the main things I would tell parents to look at: any change in mood, any increased irritability, decreased sleep, or excessive sleep. Like, you think your child's sleeping at night, but they're not sleeping at night, and instead they're sleeping all day. Those change of sleep patterns. And really withdrawal from normal activities that your child has been doing. So let's say, for example, your child previously was in the band and participated in band activities, did all of this, but then this year they don't want to, and that's normal in a lot of teenage things, right? But they don't fill that time with something else that's age appropriate, and they're spending more and more and more time in their room. And then the last thing I would say is when parents see a significant change in their child's mood from before they were on a device or on social media to after, so a significant increase of irritability or sadness or withdrawal, something's going on there that I would really recommend that they look into.
We mentioned hope. And so many parents are clinging to any aspect of hope that they can get, right? Because we're all struggling with parenting in a tech world. Mm-hmm. No parent has ever had to parent in a world like this, where our children have so much access and so early. Mm-hmm. And so can you please, hopefully, share some success stories or strategies of parents who have effectively supported their children through mental health crisis related to technology use?
The most success I see is when the family comes together and creates a plan together.
Okay.
Call it a digital family plan, maybe. And we, as in our program and in our family therapy, we create behavior management plans as they are preparing to go home and discharge from the residential program, and even our day program and our intensive programs, our intensive outpatient programs. But what is happening, we're focusing specifically on the mental health behaviors there, mm-hmm. and focusing on safety and ways to help shape the behavior and support your child. Where I've seen a lot of success with the issues with technology contributing to mental health is something very similar. We incorporated into a behavior plan for the families, but if a child is not in treatment of some sort, family can do the same thing. But start with a blank slate. Have your child create their own idea of a plan, and you as a parent create your plan, and then come together. And when you can have a compromise and kind of a middle path, those are going to be the most successful. Children need a voice. Mm-hmm. At this point in our society, and with the access to digital media and social media, that is where I believe they are feeling even more power.
Yeah.
and they want to express their identity. So giving them the ability to do it in the beginning and then compromising in the end is gonna where we have seen the most success.
So a plan sounds nice. That mm-hmm. sounds lovely, mm-hmm. but I need details. Mm-hmm. What are some example elements of a plan?
Amount of time.
Okay. When
can you use it? Where does the phone or the device go when in the bedroom?
Okay.
Things that need to be done before they have access, different activities the family will do together, or activities that you expect your child to be participating in out of school. And I also think it's really important to recognize that we're talking right now about families that things look stereotypically normal, right? Like you have a single parent raising a child, things are not going to be that easy. And so I'm talking about some pretty basic elements. I think if we look at time, content, and other activities, that can help to address whatever a family system looks like.
So many parents struggle with just getting their kids to get away from the screen, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just as easy as saying, do this because I said so, mm-hmm. right? That's like our parents maybe had a little more luck with that. But what can parents do to encourage physical activity and outdoor engagement and counteract the sedentary effects of increased screen time?
What is really important is to realize where that excessive screen time is coming from. Okay. So if we're looking at a biology perspective, brain development, that excessive screen time is hitting the pleasure centers of the brain. What comes from pleasure centers of the brain is dopamine. Mm-hmm. What does dopamine do? It makes us feel really good.
Yeah.
So where I have seen the most success is when parents find activities that a child finds as pleasurable so that they are having that much dopamine come in their brain as well. So some it may be rock climbing. Mm-hmm. For another child, it may be digging for worms in the ground. It's going to depend on your child, what they find pleasure in. And so it's not the same for every child in any way, but you've got to find something that is as pleasurable to replace it with. You can't just pull it away. That's not going to be successful in any way.
Oh my gosh, that is a golden nugget that needs to be shared far and wide. How can parents effectively communicate with schools and other caregivers to create a cohesive system for children's mental health during the digital age? Because it can't just rely on parents. That burden's too great.
No, it absolutely cannot. We need to talk to our policymakers. We need to talk to our researchers and our universities that are researching. We need to talk to the digital companies and the tech companies that are going to create the safeguards and the things to protect the content that our children are seeing. I think as a cohesive team addressing these issues and getting some really strong guidelines, we need more research to create those really strong guidelines. That's going to support the parents. But on a very smaller scale, kind of at home or in your own community, a lot of communication with your child's community to make sure that everyone is doing the same thing and having the expectation. So this is a very small example, but let's say that a parent of a child struggling with mental health issues and social media, they have a plan that's working really well at home. And then they go to grandma's house, and grandma is as loving as can be and wants to allow their grandchild to have anything they want.
Right.
And this is really with any type of behavior management. But then the grandparents or any other, I don't want to single out grandparents, but any other family member or caretaker allows the child to do things that are not what's aligned in the behavior plan or the plan that the family has created. And then we don't actually shape those behaviors and help to support the mental health. So you want to make sure that everybody in your child's village is on the same page and knows what the plan is, knows how to support your child, whether it is specifically with social media and digital use or it's their mental health struggles. The school counselors, those at your community center, everybody being on the same page. And so parents having a plan and printing it out and providing it for them.
Put it on the fridge.
Yep, and share it with everybody.
I love it. This is a good one. This is critical. Teens get a bad rap sometimes, right? For just being moody and whatever, but like, I get it. Your body's going through incredible changes, physically, mentally, emotionally. So let's give them some grace. That said, how can parents differentiate between typical teenage behavior and then signs of a more serious mental health issue exacerbated by technology use?
Wow, it's hard. It's very, very hard. It goes back to knowing your child, having open communication and understanding when there's a change in baseline. If your child has typical times where they get a little irritable, don't want to follow the rules, that's pretty normal, and we would expect that in teenage development. When we start to see significant withdrawal, change in mood before or after using social media or a digital platform, withdrawal from other life activities, less sleep, more sleep, change in appetite, starting to see different behaviors, sneaky type of behaviors, or significant change of friend group. These are the times that I say to pay close attention and start communicating even more with your child and checking the facts to see what's going on.
That's critical. What role do peer interactions on social media play in children's mental health? And how can parents guide their children to navigate these interactions positively?
Great question, because this is the time of learning who you are and developing those friendships and figuring out, how am I going to see my life moving forward? Separating from the family in a bit. So the children and the adolescents, they're looking for connection. They're looking for identity. And then we've got social media with people posting sometimes only the best parts of their life, which are going to really impact then how your child is feeling about themselves. A time of developing self-worth and self-identity, and then is exacerbated by seeing only other people having good times or only other people like the girls are impacted so much
Yeah.
by the body image issues and seeing others. And that's why, our females are seeing the significant increase of depression and anxiety. And this is the reason, the body image exposure to other peers. But the thing about it is that peer interactions are wonderful, and social media has a great benefit for this. I mean, some children in more rural areas, let's look at like an LGBTQ plus child that needs to be able to connect with others that they can identify with safely. Mm-hmm. They are able to find that on social media. Some children of color, some girls of color have even said, 70% have said that they find actually body affirming, skin color, hair affirming content on social media and with peers that it improves their mental health. So where parents can play the role is that open communication and letting their child know specifically when do they need to come to you and let you know as the parent something's going on that's could have further impact down the road. So cyberbullying, a friend saying something to them, or someone calling them out about something, or content that just pops up somehow that we know we don't want to be looking at this type of content, so that then you can help decipher with your child. The developing brain of a child and adolescent is not going to be able to decipher those things. But if you as a parent has very clear guidelines, these are the things I need you to reach out to me about and let me know, then I think we can prevent the mental health deterioration.
What I have observed through our work at BARC is just an increase in children placing their self-worth and finding their confidence, unfortunately, in those peer interactions on social media, which can be very volatile. It can give you the highest of the highs, but also the lowest of the lows. So if we as parents and caregivers and allies can help our children understand their self-worth outside of their followers, the comments, where they may or may not be included on snap maps, that's critical. Data is so important. Let's talk stats.
Absolutely. 95% of between the age of 13 and 17-year-olds right now say that they are on social media. And about 40% say almost constantly.
I saw that study. And what was so interesting to me was the phrase almost constantly. That used to not be a level. Right? And now it's just, there's so much, we don't even use hours anymore. It's just almost constantly.
Exactly. And what's even scarier is that, what a lot of the recent studies are showing is that more than 3 hours a day on social media negatively impacts a child's mental health. Most children are on social media 4 or 5 more hours a day. And so then we ask ourselves, why do we have a mental health crisis? Even more, there's studies out there that show that when people do pull back from social media, that their mental health and well-being improves. There we go, right? Now, again, these are all correlation studies, and we need a lot more research. And our children and adolescents have been part of a human experiment, right, in the last decade or so. But there's enough data out there to show that we need to find balance.
I was just about to say, that Kimberly and I aren't saying that social media is bad and that tech is bad.
Absolutely.
They're tools that can be used positively or negatively and absolutely need to be used in moderation.
Absolutely.
Under adult supervision with appropriate filters and monitors and conversations in place.
Absolutely.
So Kimberly, we could talk for hours. Our professional endeavors have a lot of overlap. At BARC, we are focused on empowering parents and children to live their healthiest lives, in appropriate balance with tech. We don't think the answer is all or nothing, but it's moderation, it's appropriate conversations and filters and time limits. I mean, goodness gracious, children have got to sleep at night, right? Instead of doom scrolling TikTok. So I have been hanging on your every word, not only professionally, but also as a mother. As we wrap, is there anything that you'd like to leave, parents with, or even children who might be seeing this?
Wow.
No pressure.
Yeah,
no pressure.
That's a powerful question. I think the most important thing is that it's okay to not feel okay. And when you're not feeling okay, reach out to your parents. Reach out, or if your parent if you recognize that your child's not feeling okay, reach out to them rather than reaching out to social media. Social media has many benefits, and I am not going to downplay those. And our world has to continue to use it, and will continue to use it, and will grow from it in many ways. However, it's human connection that is going to really help us get through the sadness, the anxiety, and the many struggles that our children and adolescents are going through right now.
And by human connection, you mean in real life?
In real life, that is right.
Kimberly, thank you so much for being here, for all that you do for children, for our community, and Hillside is so blessed to have you as part of their team.
Thank you guys for doing what you're doing. Thank you, Bark, for putting in the help to families, because we see what social media is doing, we see what the digital age is doing, and parents need support, and you're making an impact. Thank you for being here.